All right. Excuse me. Welcome to the show. It is feedback day. Finally, right? It's been so long. I'm so excited to get into this. So before we do jump in, let me express my disclaimers first and foremost. All right. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be providing you guys feedback predominantly based off of what you want me to look at, okay? I asked you all to comment what part of your track you want me to focus on most. If you did not comment, no problem, I'm still going to review your track. That being said, I'm going to review it based off of what I think should be reviewed. Now when it comes to that, I'm going to be initially reviewing on technicals, so you know, the mix, the master, so on and so forth, the levels, how it sums to mono, etc. And then beyond that, I'm going to be essentially reviewing based off of my opinion. And I want you to know that and understand that. Let me fix this a little bit. Yeah, there we go. I want you to know that and understand that because my opinion is not law, it's just my opinion, right? But that's what I have to offer. So when it comes to arrangement, when it comes to style, so on and so forth, I'm going to be giving you guys feedback, but just know, take it with a grain of salt, I'm not the only music critic that is out there. I'm not even a music critic, right? I'm just doing my best to help you based off of my opinion, okay? All right, there's the disclaimer. That being said, let's see what we can do to power through these. We're gonna go in order. So we're going to start with Dream Rider. Now again, I have to be able to download these. If I can't download these, then I'm not going to be able to review them. I apologize. So let us very quickly, Galactia. All right. Pull this in. All right, sick. Throw this up here. It does feel a little bit over compressed in this region. I'm not sure exactly why. It just feels like there's not really any separation between any of the elements. They're all kind of just like slammed together. I'd maybe take those vocal chops and put like a hard stereo on them or something like that. Have them just be really, really wide out here so they're kind of more of an accent, less of a focal point. I would stick to leaving the focal point being those saws and all the do 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 do. That being said, this is actually really strong in my opinion so far. You know, that's a little bit nitpicky, that last piece of feedback, but otherwise this is sounding really, really good. couple pieces of feedback in here. Let's start with the build-up. Initially, the build-up is louder than the drop. So we can see that right here. We're getting up in the mid -3s, and then here. We're at about -4, -4.1. So I would make sure that you, I would probably dial back the build a little bit. That will also more than likely help your congestion problem with how everything sounds just like way too like packed in and over compressed. All right, let's continue on. Sound in there is really cool. I would maybe have that sound be, again, stereoized so that it sits on the outside. It's just a little bit congested in there because it seems like everything's kind of predominantly in the middle of the mix, but that means that everything's like fighting for that attention space. If you remember from the mixing and mastering tutorial, everything is trying to be a focus right here. Nothing is serving as accessory. Fuck, sorry, hold on. There we go. I also think it could use a little bit more top end, you know, like right around here. I would maybe try EQ matching the master track to something else. You could even use this track, for example, and I think you'd find exactly that. Let's actually try it. Let's give that a shot. And down here. Right there. And pull this back up. Then you'd have raise. Raise is blue. You go blue, white. Just helps it feel a little bit cleaner, a little bit brighter. But those are all nitpicky things. Now, here's my biggest qualm. To be honest with you, I challenge you to try to make the drop flow a bit more interesting. You have very strong sounds in there, but right now, all that the drop is doing behavior-wise is going wah, 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 wah. It just feels a little bit stale. There's really like no flow, no activity. Pair with that the fact that you have on the, just like a traditional like down-up dubstep pattern, so boom, tsh, boom, it just feels, the pattern feels very stale. You keep the same sounds, but I would go back in and try to make like an interesting flow. Like I'm just thinking off the top of my head, you go, you know what I'm saying? Just like make it interesting, make the flow interesting, chop it up a little bit, get something spicy. That's where you're really gonna get that, what you call it, that just like flavor, that memorability from this. Otherwise, I think that I would give your mixing and mastering like a B+ here. Maybe decongest this build a little bit. I'm sure you could add a little bit more loudness in this drop if you really try. The other thing I was going to say is that snare feels a little bit, it's like it's getting a little bit buried in there. Not that big of a deal though. I'd maybe turn that ARP down a little tiny bit. It's a little bit overbearing. But that's it. I give this, like I said, overall I give this like a strong B+. I think it doesn't take very much effort in order to get it to an A. I just think there's a couple things in there that personally I would rework, and that's about it. So this is really solid, and hopefully this feedback helps. The intro is really, really strong. I'm a big fan of that, by the way. So Dream Rider, great stuff. Again, hopefully this was helpful for you. We will move on to the next one. Let us go to RJ Blue. Let's go. All right. So we are at 11. Download file. Okay. This in here. Oh shit. My mouse got all fucked up. Come on. There we go. Really like the glitchiness here. Okay. All right, sorry about that. Okay, Mikey, you and I have had a handful of sessions together, so I know exactly kind of what to look for with you for the most part. I know your style of music, it's a little bit different. That being said, I think that on the master, you could probably push this to be a little bit louder. I think the kick drum is peaking really, really, really hard. As you can tell, your sub-level kind of stagnates around that -6 level. Kick drum pushes way, way, way past it. That's predominantly what would be keeping you from getting it any louder. If you were to try to do something like this, I think you'd find that you could push it another several decibels. So even though your style of music doesn't necessarily require as much volume as like true bass music, I still think that you should try to get it to at least like a -5 LUFS, being that we're still in electronic music here. Now, this is an interesting track. It doesn't necessarily, it sums to mono very, very well, but that leads me to believe that there aren't quite enough side elements going on to just really give it that full sound. I would maybe just simply try image pushing it. With what you call it, like just like an ozone imager, you could just do the standard image pushing that we talk about, which looks like this. Allow me to demonstrate when it loads. There we go. Let's go something like 20, 25, 30, something like that. See, it doesn't necessarily even widen that many elements because there's not even that many elements that have stereo. So I would maybe try to find certain elements that you think are accessory and add some stereo there. That being said, all of these little nitpicks aside, the mix is very, very clean. There's one very interesting piece though, and that is the bass. The bass feels very muddy. And that is very difficult. I don't come across that very often, especially with these headphones. These headphones make the one sort of not downfall, but I have to be wary that they cover up mud a little bit, but they sound very, very muddy even in these. So I would maybe figure out if there's bass elements clashing in your mix. My guess is there's probably a couple of synths in there that are clashing together. That's creating that mud. So it's important to make sure that we have some sort of dedicated sub. I do believe by watching and monitoring that you do have something. I can tell there is like a dedicated sub in there, but it's almost, there's other elements that are interfering with it. So just be wary of that. That being said, the soundscapes are really strong. The writing is really solid. I'm a big fan. I love the glitchy intro. So all that I think is really, really solid. There's just a couple little mixing and mastering things that I would change, the ones that I had mentioned prior. And aside from that, I think this is really, really strong. So hopefully that helps and gives you a decent amount of, decent idea as to where I think you should take it. Now let me ask you, you said rather, focus on the drum processing, tonal balances, specifically the low mids. That would be awesome. Thank you so much as always. Yeah, I noticed the new name. I love it. Okay, yeah, so again, the mid bass, I kind of already told you my thoughts there. I feel as if there's some clashing going on. The drums I feel is really, really solid. Tonal balance I also feel is really, really solid. Everything sounds really, really good and really strong. I think it's that lead synth, that that's what needs to have a little bit of stereo behind it. I'd maybe try Dimension Expander. All right. Hopefully that gives you some insight, buddy. All right. Got to move on to the next one to make sure I keep in a timely manner. So we're going to go to Hunter. Let me put this down here. We're at 17. I'm going to have to speed these up a little bit. I'm rambling. All right, Hunter. Let's see what we got here. Project final. All right. Filling up background elements and taking track to next level. Okay.
Error. Boot sequence interrupted. Reboot.
Just an idea is you might try hard stereoing that vocal. I think it could make a cool effect having that just sit on the side of the ears rather than in the middle.
Download sequence started. Launching. Error.
All right, let's see. All right, let's start here with the build-up. So regarding the writing and the build-up, in my opinion,
Downloads.
I think you could incorporate some more drums into the build-up to make it a little bit more interesting. Regarding the chord progression or the bass line progression in the background, the dun, dun.
Launching.
I think that's the wrong place to have that chord progression. I would maybe move those sounds somewhere like back over here. Kind of already do, but maybe the stronger sounds. In this build section right here, I'd try to keep it, this is again my opinion, I'd try to keep it again relatively monotone with the bass, or just have like a strong bass riser to really build that tension, because with the way that the chords are working right now, it leaves the listener, in my opinion, a little bit confused, not quite sure what to anticipate. It's not a climax in energy, rather than just like a change in the chord progression that doesn't necessarily build energy. So I would recommend taking that chord progression out. That's just my opinion.
Error.
Now I'm trying to figure out like what kind of vibe you're going for. If it's like kind of wookie, that's a little bit different, but it does seem like you're using some heavy sounds. I'm very familiar with these sounds. I can identify a lot of them as my samples. So I'm noticing that the high percussion here is relatively lacking. I would maybe try, you know, adding some various high percussions in there between, I mean, you could try things like this.
Error.
Again, it still depends on the vibe. The vibe here is, it's a little bit ambiguous because I'm not really sure whether it's trying to be like really, really heavy. Or like almost like Murata style, because the sounds feel very, very heavy, but the pattern feels very like kind of wook bass-y, like it's like that long sustain. If you're going for the heavier style, I would strongly recommend using a lot more sounds in there, getting a lot more activity. You did say filling up the background, so I'm assuming that is what you're kind of looking for. So I would do more high percussion in there, you know, get your on-beat ride. You already kind of have your offbeat ride in there, I could tell. Not really, I can't even really hear that. So make sure you get an offbeat ride as well. So down, 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 so on and so forth. And then regarding the other sounds, I'd maybe try to do some, get some layering going on in there too, because it's just very, very apparent that these are shallow, dry sounds. I can just tell knowing that I'm familiar with the samples that they're just individual like samples. There's no real layering going on there or anything like that. The sub, I'm trying to think. The sub doesn't necessarily, I don't necessarily think you're using a dedicated sub, and I think that'll help a lot too with the pattern, because when the sub drops out, for example, right here, you're just losing all of that energy, right? So, you know, instead of that, you know, you could have do, or do, if you brought in like another sample, for example. So like in this down section where that reverb hits, you could have like another sound go doo-doo, and then keep that sub going for each single hit. That'll keep things more active and flowing. The other thing I was going to say is that this, it's not necessarily tuned. This sample's in a completely different key than this sample. And this sample's also in a different key. All of these are completely different notes, so it leaves things feeling a little bit scattered. For example, the one this is playing, that's going do do do, and then this is going wah, and then this is going meow 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 meow. So it just leaves things feeling very, very, very scattered. So I would try to make sure that you pitch everything to be the same key. I'm trying to think of anything else. Let's check levels real quick. So the loudness is definitely lacking a bit, but I can tell kind of where you're at right now with your producing journey, and I don't necessarily, think that loudness should be a priority of yours right now. I would instead just focus on, you know, experimenting with sound design, experimenting with various sounds and samples, and getting your layers all tight to make sure that you can build that energy, because right now this is just lacking that energy that I think that you're looking for. So I would start focusing there, using some of the tips that I have previously mentioned, and see if you can't just get some more activity going on there. Hopefully this helps. I'm going to have to move on to the next one now, but keep at it, and we'll review again next time on a different track, and hopefully I can better gauge where you're at with that. All right, we have now, I want to say TADELEOT or TADELEOT. All right, let's see, the mix down feedback for you. Why? Oh, come on, motherfucker. There we go. 25. All right, yeah, I'm gonna have to speed these up. Fuck, I'm going really slow. That's what I was worried about. All right. Really like that progression that you have in there. So far, so good. Everything checks out. I will say this chord right here feels a little weird. All right, I have a couple very, very honed in pieces of feedback for you that I think will give you the most insight. We will start with the... So sub-level checks out really, really strong. Based off of the meter, you could have a little bit more loudness here. That being said, it sounds really, really clean, and I don't know that I want to push you guys for like super, super, super loud if it's not necessary, but I would try to get it one more luff up. Just get it to -4. You're at -5. That could be as simple as literally just doing it. Yeah, my guess is if you just turn your sub down 1 decibel and then you turn the master gain up 1 decibel into your clipper, that's when you're going to get that -4 luffs that we want. So that's good. Now here's where some of my critiques come in. Number one, the snare in this. The breath of the snare is way too loud. I can hear it pretty much over top of everything else. I would focus more on having the punch of the snare hit rather than the breath of the snare. It's just like dun 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 dun. It's just like really, really loud. So I would try to turn, it just sounds like the snare might be over compressed because of that. So I would turn that down a little bit. Not necessarily turn the snare down, but you could maybe just use, your best bet might just be using like automation on it. So for example, let's just like drag this down. Say that this is your snare, right? You could just like drag, so you can make some automation with the gain to where it goes something like this, and that way like your breath is substantially, you know, quieter than your initial hit of the snare. It's a pretty easy way that you could try to do it. Beyond that, sub sounds really good, kick sounds really good, sums to mono very, very well, so excellent job there, sounds fantastic. Now I would say there's, the other thing is in this breakdown section, I would create a mid-bass patch there. So mid-bass patch is not the sub, it's not the chords, it's something that's in the middle, right? A nice little mid-bass, you could just, you know, honestly you might even be able to get away with just like a saw. So wavetable, we could try. Something playing one of these two notes down in that range, and then EQ out the sub, because it just sounds very, very hollow in that section. Like something should be continuing to carry the bass throughout there. I can tell the sub is still there. That's good, but it loses a lot of power by having the mid bass be missing there. So I would introduce a mid bass. My last critique, this is 100% based off of my opinion. It takes way too long to get to this action part right here. It takes over 2 minutes. Usually the longest that I would recommend going before getting to a drop or breakdown in that sense is like 1.5 minutes. So it just, and I could tell while listening, it lost my attention a little bit in here. So I would find a way, arrangement wise, in my opinion, to try to cut this space down a little bit. I think there's a multitude of different areas that you could do it. I'll let you be the decider there. I'm not gonna, because if I try to go in and actually pick where to do it, it'll take a little bit too much attention for the purpose of this. And secondly, I think it's a great exercise that you should, you know, become familiar with. So I would definitely recommend cutting it back a little bit as far as arrangement goes. I think the yeah, I'm not really sure. Honestly, like I can't really comment further there. I'm uncertain because there's only so much that I can offer on like one strong listen through. But hopefully this is insightful. But overall, you're in a really strong position, and this is sounding pretty good. So great work. Polish up those couple little things if you so incline, and I think you got a really strong track on your hands. Good stuff. All right, we're going to do alone. Fuck. Sorry, buddy. I really do need the download in order for me to properly give you a review here. So alone, unfortunately, I have to not review your demo at this time. So we're gonna do. All right. Sorry, buddy. We'll get you next month. Gotta make sure you guys get those downloads in. Oh man, another one. Damn. Well, yep, same thing right here. 34:45. Let me just like make sure. Yeah, there's no download here. We gotta get downloads, guys. Gotta make sure we have downloads. Sorry, we'll get you next month. All right. DELFF, how's it going, my man? Make sure that I have. All right. Nice. Wow, man, first things first, I just gotta say, you have come such a long way. It's fantastic to hear. This is really, really, really strong. Let's review some of our metrics, and then I'll provide some of my opinion feedback. So first things first, let me check. I want to see the EQ response here, so I'm going to just match against elastic. All right, go here. Push it up. Okay, so that's exactly what I was hearing. So first things first, it seems like you got a little bit of mud in this range. It's like the 350-ish sort of range, as you could tell by the EQ match here. Yours just has a little bit, you can see yours is yellow. Yours has a little bit too much action going on there, and that's what I was hearing as well. So that creates the muddiness that you're hearing. It'll sound a little bit cleaner if you just duck there a little bit. See, it has it ducking as much as like 4 decibels here, based off of a relatively, I guess it's kind of generous of a smoothing, but I would first off try that. I think that'll help quite a bit. Your loudness is not quite there. That being said, I think one of the main fixes here, this track does not sum to mono super well. You can kind of hear how it's like, you know, it's very, very faint when we check the mono. So what you can do, what I would recommend is just on some of those sounds, put a mid-side separator right here, right? See that guy? We got him from the Patreon. And we would just turn the mid gain up. So we listen in mono, and then I would just turn the mid gain up on those sounds until they sound a little bit more comparable to the drums, right? That's what we use as our benchmark. And I think that'll also help to fill up your loudness a bit. Seems as if you're like a decibel or so down too low. Yeah, I want to get you to -4 for a track like this. There's really no reason why you shouldn't. These are loud and aggressive sounds, so we should be able to get it to -4 LUFS. And right now you're chilling at -5, so you know we can get it up another decibel. I think we're straight. Another thing that might be preventing you from attaining that. Actually, never mind. Your kick drum is pretty well compressed. Very, very well compressed, actually. Let me just see for fun if I can't just get it there. clip. So it does get a little bit grittier when we do that, but I think you can probably get it there by ducking that mid, and also, I'm sorry, not that mid, by ducking that 350 hertz region a little bit, and then getting the mids to fill out. Now in regards to your sounds, they sound a little bit airy and gritty, and not necessarily in a good way. That's being fully transparent. Especially the second sound, so like the ding ding. Sounds like there's some reverb on there. I'd maybe try to keep that dry, or whatever is creating that space. I would, if that doesn't work, then you could try just shaping the volume so that it's more like this is kind of what I'm trying to say. Like that with the sound, if that makes sense. And then this sound right here, it's also a little bit gritty. So what you could do is you could try, I haven't given you guys a disperser yet, but you can make it super, super easily. That's why I haven't really given it to you. You could just try to put on a disperser on some of those sounds by just duplicating like this many EQ3s. It looks crazy, right? And on that main bass, I think it's going to sound really, really, really good and help it just sound a lot grittier and cooler. If that doesn't work, you can always try the vocoder modulation, and that'll just make it sound a little bit more polished and less kind of airy, loose, and unclean. But overall, this is sounding really good. The only other piece of feedback, kick drum in the build is a little bit loud. I'd turn that down a little bit. But aside from that, dude, you're really, really making progress. I'm super proud to see this. This is fantastic. Very, very glad to hear, especially after you had, we had talked over the course of COVID. It's really, really good to see you back at it and doing so well. So great job, DELFF. You're killing it, and I can't wait to hear what you got in store next week. All right, now we have Freddie. Let's go. We're at 4230. So 4230. Alrighty. Freddie, let's see what you got here. Mix down to the first intro / drop. Got you, dog. Oh no. Come on. Okay, there we go. I don't know why my browser's doing that. It's a problem. All right.
When I lay down, go to sleep, I pray that we will never be just the love that didn't make it. I think about the times we spent chasing after what we missed, 'cause that's exactly what I'm craving. Bad lies, bad fights, right person, wrong time, break down my walls, 'cause we knew that I'd fall for you.
Let me make sure that I don't have anything here fucking shit up.
Lies, bad fights, right person, wrong time, break down my walls, 'cause we knew that I'd fall for you. I'd fall for you. Can't fight this feeling that is real. Sometimes I feel like I might just fall for you. Just fall for you. I'd fall for you.
Okay, we're gonna start with the vocals. Now these could be, I'm not sure how they were obtained, but the vocals are pretty rough right now. I'm not sure how much you can fix that. If this is your processing, then that's a different story, but it does kind of seem like you got this from like an acapella or something like that. But it feels like the vocals essentially were like high pass to like pretty strong, like this. Because the root frequency is like completely missing, so if that's the case, then we obviously need that back. Again, though, if it's not your processing, there's not much you could do. But I will say that is a pretty strong hindrance on the vocals. Now what I'm seeing here, I think you got
I'd fall for you. I'd fall for you.
very, very interesting. You got a very weird sort of low sub bass. And it sounds like it's creating distortion, even though like I'm able to boost it and it's really not even.
Lies, bad fights, right person, wrong time. Break down my walls, 'cause you knew that I'd fall for you. I'd fall for you.
So that's interesting. I'd say I'd try to rework your sub. I really don't like, let me see.
Down my walls, 'cause you knew that I'd fall for you.
I think your sub is a little bit too deep. I might try,
Down my walls, 'cause you knew that I'd fall for you. I'd fall for you.
yeah, that's tough. I really can't even tell what's going on there, but that sub is definitely giving you some issues. Let's continue on. Also watch it. Look, you see how all the way up here, like it's touching -6, and then watch it disappear, right? That leads me to believe there's phasing going on there, and I'm not sure what would be causing it.
Just fall for you.
Okay, so you are, this is so interesting. First of all, this is very well written in my opinion, the drop especially. The sub sounds good here in the drop. It sounds really, really loud. That being said, it's not super loud. We're not getting over -4 LUFS here. And the drums are very, very, very buried. They're pretty deep down in there. That being said, that seems like it should be a fixable problem. Make sure that you have things properly side chained. And I think it would maybe be as simple as just turning up the volume of the drums. The snare especially is super buried, but the kick is also very buried. Listen. Like in this section in particular, this leads me to believe it's not side chained at all. Over here it sounds better. Could still be a little bit louder, that snare especially. Kick could probably come up a bit too, but right here it's just completely buried, just very, very buried. So I would be very wary of that. And make sure that when you're doing so, turning up the volume, that you're making, what am I trying to say? The proper adjustments, especially with the kick drum, so that it doesn't distort. You want to make sure that you're keeping that nice and compressed using something like a low-end compressor. But yeah, overall this is sounding really good. I think the imaging is good. Let's check mono. It sounds to mono pretty well too. I think it's just like really, really, I think the drums could just use some work there. Very, very buried. And then it does sound like a little bit distorted. So like if you're clipping the sub against those synths, I'd maybe try to dial it back a little tiny bit. But yeah, that's pretty much all that I got for this one. This is definitely a little bit of an enigma. It's a little hard to figure out in certain areas, but it's sounding good overall. I would just, make sure that your sidechain is affecting all of your synths. and then check that vocal and maybe try to reprocess it if it's your processing. If it's not, I don't really know what to tell you. There's really no way to fix that, unfortunately. But yeah, this sounded good so far. That's pretty much all I got for this one. Thank you for sending. Let us move on to 50/40. KOPIL now. All right, let's get this in here. See, that's my fault. So I did leave that on, but I don't really think it changed too much. I just got to make sure that that stuff stays off. All right. Let's download. Those bells in the background, I might stereoize those a little bit harder, just an opinion. All right, okay, I got a pretty good idea of where we're at here. Mostly everything here is opinion. There's a couple objective fixes that I would make, but mostly everything's opinion. First things first, I think you lose a little bit of psychological impact by having the drop be so wet. I would maybe try to cut reverb on things and also just like cut tail so that it's... So maybe it does like a little bit more of like a this sort of effect, like this. Kind of see what I'm saying there? Like keep it sounding a little bit more dry. It sounds very, very wet right now, and I think that's taking away from like the energy that you could have there. The kick drum is sounding really good. The sub isn't necessarily technically bad by any means, but I could tell that it's pretty much just like one frequency. It's just like a single frequency sub, and I think you're losing out on a lot of intensity and value by not having any harmonics there. Especially when this gets played live, it's going to sound very flat and stale. So I would recommend using a sub that has a harmonic in there as well, or introducing a harmonic into your sub patch. All right, now let's get over here to this dubstep portion. So the snare's a little bit buried. So I'd make sure I pull that snare up. Aside from that, it's kind of the same problem. I think you're really being hindered here by the droning sounds. Like that's definitely cutting the psychological impact. Like those drones in the back. Them not moving and being stagnant is taking away from the energy. So again, just like over here, I'd have them move. I'd probably keep that same thing going over here. Have them move with the bass line or something of that sort, so that it, you know, it has that sort of movement and energy. Aside from that, that's pretty much my only qualm. Now let's check here. This is not quite loud enough in my opinion. You're at -6, so you could definitely use a couple more decibels of gain. So let's see what happens when we do that. So you could definitely obtain it if you were to just keep that kick drum a little bit tighter. You could use low end compressor. And then the sub would have to just come down to match the gain that you put into the overall master. So for example, if you're turning this up by 3 decibels, which is what I would recommend, I would turn the sub down by 3 decibels so that you sort of balance that sub versus everything. But overall, I really like this. I like the writing a lot. The chords are really cool. The sound in the drop is cool. It's definitely unique. It's something I haven't necessarily heard. And I really like it. I like the direction that you're going. So let's get some of those things dialed in, and I'm excited to hear where this goes from there. Good job, Kopil. All right, Brent, you are up next. So we are now at 5702. Alrighty. Let's see, how many more of these? Oh, we're doing pretty good on time. I could still be doing better, but it might take a little bit of practice for me to get good at these. I want to be able to handle, you know, I'm guessing that next month you guys are going to be pouring in quite a few more of these because there's, you know, way more of you here than there are feedback demos, so. Oops, that's not the, there we go. Alrighty. Alright, so I'm going to normalize this right off the rip, because it looks like it was mastered, but it's almost like it was exported at -12. All right, so this is brilliant. Let's just start with that. It's like a cross between Ace Aura and Porter Robinson, and I've never heard anything like it in regards to color base. So this is fantastic. Now it says, you say that you're looking for any advice on making the drop lead be more present. Now here's the thing, I can't really tell what the lead is, so if that's the case, I feel your struggle, but that being said, I don't really have like an issue with it. It doesn't feel like it's buried or being lost or anything. So I don't necessarily know that that's a problem. That the simple answer though is always, it's if you have a lead that's just not as present as it needs to be, more than likely the biggest issue is you have one of two things going on. Either it's too far stereoized and there's not enough middle signal, so you would just use a mid-side separator like this. Again, if you don't have it, you can get it on my page, and you just turn up the mid gain until you listen in mono, and then you turn up the mid gain on the sound until it sounds good. When you exit mono, you'll notice a massive difference there, okay? The other thing that you can do is just a root frequency cut. So you find the root frequency of your lead, find where it is, and then on most of the other sounds, you just do a little cut like this where that frequency lies, okay? So you put this EQ on the other sounds, not on your lead, right? But that makes room for the root frequency of your lead. So that's pretty much all that you can do, but like I said, I don't really hear a problem. Now, it does seem like you can get this a little bit louder, but I wanna hear what happens when we do. I think you can get 2 more decibels out of this. So it sounds really good, but it's definitely quiet. So we gotta work on just getting that a little bit louder. And I'm trying to figure out why it can't get louder. Let's try an EQ match here. Okay, put this up here. Right down in there, more than likely. All right, so let's match. I'm guessing that it's that like 500-ish hertz range. No, not really. But I will say it does sound much cleaner, just right off the rip with the Revolpe EQ matching. So let's try, if we do that, let's see if we can't get a little bit more gain going on here. That does pretty much fix that problem. Now I do think you need a little bit more loudness. Okay, yeah, but that sounds fine. All right, so you can, try doing an EQ match like I just did with Elastic, because whatever this did, I think it's mainly this boost around here, in like this 4.555K region, that's adding a little bit of loudness, and it seems like that's where your track was missing some. It's a very, very interesting EQ match that we're looking at here, but when I did it, I was able to push things a lot harder, and I didn't get as many mean artifacts in my ears. So try that, and then the only thing that's preventing this from being a clean push is just the sub level, because we boosted to 4 decibels. The sub level is a little bit too loud. Same with the kick drum. So make sure that you properly re-level your sub and maybe compress your kick drum's low end a little bit. But this is really, really strong. I really like it too. It's a simple pattern, but the execution is pretty flawless. Listen. And I like that chime that you have in the background. It just occurred to me that chime might be the lead though. If that is the case, try maybe boosting the fundamental frequency of that like 1 or 2 decibels, and it might sit on top of the other sounds a little bit better. I don't really think it's that far buried, if that is the lead that you're talking about though. But anyways, hopefully this is helpful. I really like this though, so I'm very, very excited to hear how you get this guy wrapped up. Great work, and yeah, excited for next month to hear from you. All right, let's go. Legend 27. All right, so we are at 104, 105. get this guy downloaded. New audio track, delete this one. All right. Strong so far. Vocal's a little bit buried. I might try to find the lowest frequencies of the vocal, which I think that the effect kind of nullifies the fundamental frequencies a little bit, but still trying to find that region and then pull down that region on most of the other sounds, like with an EQ tool like this. I think that'll help quite a bit. I also just think you can simply boost the vocal 1.5 decibels. No consequences, just push it up a little bit more. Alright, so first things first. In this section, I'd like to hear a little bit of width on the vocals. So you could go about that a couple different ways. You could try just putting on like an ozone imager 2, stereoizing it, setting it to mode 1, turning up the width maybe like 35% or something like that. You could try that. You could also go about it in some of the more creative ways, like for example, duplicating it, putting a chorus ensemble on it, and then mid-side separator after that, and then turning the mid down maybe like 5 or so decibels so that just the width of the chorus is coming through on a separate layer again. So you could try those things. That might help a little bit. That'll also just help the vocal feel a little bit more energetic into the drop here. Now let's check this drop. It looked good from just a general meter and it sounded good, so I want to say there's not too many issues here, but I do want to hear. Okay, so I would actually say, all right, so here's what I would do. I would actually pull down a decibel off of your, into your clipper. So I'd pull it down a decibel before it goes into the clipper. So I think you can get a little bit more, it just sounds a little bit too smushed. So pull it down a decibel because you have plenty of loudness to work with, and instead what I would do, then from there I would boost your sub up a little bit more. See, your sub's lacking a couple areas right there. Also, sometimes it has those like weird frequencies coming up. For example, right there, we get the 34 as well as 72, which is its double, and that's going to create some mud. So make sure that your sub is playing strong harmonics. You can use one of my maximal sub samples if you want. I obviously don't hold anybody at gunpoint and force them to, but those weird harmonics in there are definitely going to be killing the way this can sound, especially when all your other elements are working so strongly. I would hate for your sub to kill it in any way, shape, or form. The drums as well. they're a little bit buried. I'd like to see them on top of the mix a little bit more, or just a little bit more in the forefront. It also just seems like the drum samples may be a little bit less than ideal, especially the kick drum. It sounds a little bit, at least for this track, the kick drum sounds a little bit stale, so I'd maybe try swapping out a kick drum for something that sounds a little bit better. The snare also just sounds a little bit harsh and hissy. I'd like to hear a little bit more of that transient, some of that punch instead of that hiss. It's not overly hissy though, so it's like, it's not terrible, but I just want to hear more of that smack. And then, so after you pull it down by 1 decibel, I think this could be a little bit wider, so I would do some image pushing. Again, we could do some image pushing like this. Just take an ozone 7 or an ozone whatever. Grab your imager, and then we could push this like 20, this one like 30, and this one like, I'm sorry, this one like 25 and this one like 30. Because I don't necessarily think that you have enough, you can afford some more width in there. Now let's see, lastly, I just want to check the EQ response of this guy. See, it's telling me, so this is actually a really, really strong fix here. This helps a lot. Gets rid of a little bit of the mud down in this 300 hertz range. It keeps some of your strong sounds in your low mids at about 1K, which is where a lot of your the fundamental frequencies of your main voices are, but then there's a little bit of harshness that comes on in some of these ranges, and it negates that a bit. So I would try an EQ match like this out for size and just see how that works. But the biggest tell right here is, just like I said, this massive dip here at 77. That's because, again, you have that weird harmonic in your sub that's just kind of fucking shit up a bit. So, but that's pretty much all the feedback that I have here. It sounds really, really strong otherwise. So hopefully some of those tricks can help you get it to that end goal. But yeah, it's sounding really, really strong, and excited to hear where you go with it. Thank you very much for sending. All right, we now have Kyle. Let's see what's going on. We are at 113.16. All right, let's get this downloaded. Come on. Okay. Meditation. There we go. I really like the ambience in this section. This is great so far.
Soften the breath. Observe the flow of natural meditation.
Interesting concept.
Beautiful, beautiful meditation. Beautiful,
Nice vocal work there.
meditation. Beautiful meditation. Deep
right, so let's try basic master here. I want to get a piece out of this. All right, so there's a couple very easy fixes. So I saw predominantly that you want some feedback on the mix and master. I have some conceptual feedback for you. I'll provide that afterwards, but let's start with the mix and master. First things first, the only thing keeping you from obtaining the proper loudness here is your kick drum. See that bump and peak? We can press it with the low end controller just like that. Then we can go in, let's just grab a G clip. Because the mix sounds pretty solid here. See, now we're able to get over our -4 LUFS. We're good to go. Anyways, beyond that, your feedback you want is on mix and layering / filling up the track. Okay. All right, so first things first, this section sounds nice and full. In my opinion. Now, that wub could be louder. That wub could be substantially louder and also have a little bit of width. It's pretty narrow. That is preventing your track from feeling full right there because it's too quiet. These little sounds could have a little bit more stereo there. That's a really, really good sound.
Deep relaxation.
So for this, I would maybe even just try a mid-side separator. Yeah, see, just like, you could probably go as high as 8. Mid-side separator on that sound. That it's either pitch map or like it's just that melodic rhythm sound.
Deep.
And that'll get it sounding a lot stronger in the mix. But yeah, this sound also needs to come up quite a bit. That's the quietest sound by a long shot. So yeah, it's mostly just working on your levels. Your levels could use a little bit of work, but it's pretty easy fix, a very, very easy fix, to be honest with you. That's the easiest possible fix we could have. Everything else sounds good. That being said, the bass line here, in my opinion, is a little funky. I don't know how much it necessarily agrees with the melody that you have playing there. So I'm trying to think of like a bass line that could work. Yeah, I'm not too sure. It just sounds like it's disagreeing with the melody. It almost sounds like it's a little bit out of key, so I might experiment there with that bass line a little bit more. But that's really like the only issue. That and the levels is pretty much it. Everything else, like I just showed you, like we can get it to proper loudness extremely easily. So I would give this a really, really strong rating, and this is really, really good. I like the sounds. I enjoy the mixing quite a bit. It's just that weird bass line for me. It's a little bit off. Can't really put my finger on. I think it's just a really odd bass line, and if you find just some notes that go along with the melody a little bit better, it's going to work way, way better. But that's pretty much all I got for this one. This is really, really strong. So good job here, Kyle. Let's see what you got for me, Brian. All right, we are at 120. So far, so great. Good job, Brian. Melody chord progression is really good. I got it for you. I know exactly what we need to do here. This is really, really strong. Before I even look at the mixing and mastering on it, because I can already tell it sounds really good, so I don't really care as much off the rip. Well, here's what we need on this one. Yeah, let's start with the notes that you want before I get into the unsolicited feedback. So that sound right there. Resample that, bring it over here into the build-up, and then have it sort of swell in. Experiment with some different filters and so on. So and then another thing right here, this bleed. Cut this right here. Do not let the bleed from anything in this section go past this point right here. Cut that bleed, let this part of the drop start completely dry. Also, my true recommendation would be to get rid of this fake out. Beyond that, I would put a cool fill right here. Maybe something with like a nice little arp or something. Maybe change the bass line a little bit. If that makes sense. And you could get like a cool little pre-drop in there. Let's see. I'm just playing around here, trying to do something cool for you. Give me some. Give me some. Also be cool if we just had like something driving this here. It's a little bit like repetitive, like any sort of like melody, like. That makes sense. You know what I'm saying? I like this section a lot, not as many qualms. Give me some! Give me some! All right, now let's look at the master real quick there, but that's my feedback on the arrangement. But what I said for the build will work if you just try to do that. just foreshadowing the drop. Let's check.
Give me some.
So the only thing that's going to be preventing you from getting louder here, I can already tell right off the rip, is the kick drum. So let's actually prove me correct first. Let's go right there, turn this off, and then let's just go grab a G clip first and foremost, like this.
Give me some.
Let's try to boost it by 1.5.
Give me some.
Hear that kick drum distorting? Yep, I called it. I was right.
Give me some.
So let's
Give me some.
use low end controller right there, and that does that. And then if you want, you can even use this little extra sub, boost it by like 1.25.
Give me some.
Cool, sounded good, easy peasy. See, I know what to do. Anyways, that's pretty much it. The mix and master right off of that by listening is really strong. Now, one thing I did just notice, that sound completely lost when you sub into mono. So watch out for that. If you want that to be more of a focal element, go grab a mid-side separator and boost that mid. Until you can hear it strong enough in the mono mix. So that's my feedback right there. Overall, this is sounding really good though. You're on a really good track with it, Brian. So great work there. Can't wait to hear where you go with that one. Okay, so now we have BRLX. I got you, bro. You just want feedback on the drop? No problem. We are at 127.45. Fuck. All right. Oh, fuck, man. I apologize. I can't review this because I can't download it. I need to be able to download it. Sorry, buddy. I'll get you on next month's. All right, let's see now. We are at 28.30. SNEKWUE, I think is how you pronounce it. Probably completely wrong. Go. Snake Kings, all right, let's go get it. Delete this, delete this, delete this, delete this, and insert audio. There we go, that'll work. All right. Cool so far. All right, right off the rip, the arrangement is really strong, and I like those drums in theory, but there are weird artifacts going on in there. They don't sound super clean, and aside from that, they're very buried. So I would do my best to reconstruct that drum loop with better quality samples and also bring it a bit more forward in the mix. You can hear a weird bump in that kick drum. It's just not very, it's not very pleasing sounding. I would also side chain your kick a little bit deeper. It sounds a bit shallow right now. Kind of sounds like you're using a compressor for the side chain, so I'd definitely switch to a volume cutting bass side chain.
VIP.
So there's a lot of stuff here that we can change to make the sound substantially better. So also the drums that you used in the intro are the same drums that we have here in the drop, and there is no side chain pretty much whatsoever. It seems like whatever limiter you're using is the only reason why it sounds like there's any ducking on the sounds whatsoever when the drums hit. So make sure that you're using a side chain, make sure that you're using a strong volume automation based side chain. If you're not sure what that is, go back and watch some of my old mixing and mastering videos, the ones that I did in February. They will give you a lot of insight as to what to do for that process. Side chaining is what we need there on those drums. We need the sound to duck whenever the drums come in, and right now they're just not. Secondly, your sub it's an octave too high. So your sub right here is playing 85.7-ish hertz. It's an F sub, but it's F1. We need it to be playing F0. So turn your sub down an octave and it's going to make a pretty massive difference. Also, in general though, it's way too loud. It's all the way up to pretty much the top there. You want it about at this -6 line or over if you're really, really good and you've been doing this for a while and you're pretty certain on the moves that you're making. That being said, I can tell that you're a newer producer, so we don't necessarily need as much loudness as the focus right now. We just focus on the fundamentals. So turn it down an octave, and I would say drop it by about 6 decibels. So turn your sub down by 6 decibels, okay? And that's pretty much where I would start. Now you're using a lot of the same sounds in the drop as you did in the intro. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, I could tell that you're, figuring some things out here with this drop. So I would just recommend making those changes that I said. Let's start with the side chain. Let's, if you can, try to get some different drums in there. Again, these drums are just a little bit messy. So get a cleaner set of drums in there. So I would just replace exactly what you have, but with cleaner drums. If you can manage to keep that top loop I think is sounding fine, but it's the kick and the snare that are just a little bit old and sloppy. And then that sub, get that sub knocked down an octave and turn it down 6 decibels, and I think you're gonna have a lot stronger of a result. Also, I would strongly recommend whatever limiter you're using, don't use it. Go download G-Clip instead. It's a free clipping. You can look at it as if it's a limiter, but it's a clipping plugin. And use this instead of your limiter. It'll give you a lot more of a transparent sound. That limiter is giving you a lot of issues, I could tell. So that's my feedback here. Great work, and hope to hear another demo from you on the next one. Hopefully this works well for you. Let's move to Jared. Jared, it is 134. All right. Download. Here we go. Cool vocal chops. Cool bass sounds. Like the pluck as well. Everything checks out so far, no qualms. Love the bass progression. All right, so you are the new king of heaven trap. I am prophesizing it right now. Let's see here. Feedback on the mixing, feedback on the creating more variation throughout the track. I really think that the track is strong so far. I wouldn't even necessarily focus. You don't necessarily need any more variation. I think that the writing is really, really solid here. We're going to focus predominantly on the mixing. I think that's the biggest thing here. So first things first. One thing to note, right off the rip, your sub is inconsistent. Watch this. So your sub level, you can see right there, is barely touching -6. This next note drops down substantially. That means that there's a problem with your sub. I would definitely look into that, make sure that your sub isn't phasing and clashing with any of the other sounds. That's like the #1 thing that I would do. Right off the rip. Secondly, drum selection here. I get what you're going for here with the drums that you picked. There's a certain sound that you're trying to obtain. That being said, the drums here are very messy, and that's going to give you issues obtaining that clean sound that I think you can otherwise have if it weren't for the drum selection, because I think your sounds are clean, minus your sub. You know, your sub needs a little bit of work, but everything else is sounding really, really clean so far. I haven't checked mono, we'll do that in a minute, but everything else is sounding really clean. But that kick drum feels a bit buried, and that snare just feels a little bit weak. So I would try to use a different kick drum. Here's what I would do. In order to retain that same sound, I would get a MIDI track, and you can use simpler, just jump into simpler, and I would go download Lex Flat. Here's Lex Flat, Lex Luger kick flat right there. And then we just want to play that root C note, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to layer that. So we're going to group this, bring another one in, and then with this layer, I'm going to use, see if I can't still find these. Yeah, Rockstar right here, 7 trap kick drums. You can just download these. I'm pretty sure they're free. Let's see. Yep, this free sample pack, you can download it right there. All right. In that pack, you're going to find these drums right here. So I would maybe go with this one. You're going to turn that down, and then on this channel, just this one, so not both of them, you're going to EQ out that low end, like this. Now, we're going to experiment with just pushing the volume here. Let's turn this guy up a little bit more. Great. And then let's filter up to about 40 hertz. Let's maybe go 45. We'll duck a little bit right there. Great. Same feeling kick drum. Might pull this down a little bit. Same feeling kick drum. Way stronger, way more power with this kick drum. You're going to find it's a lot easier to mix too. So that's what I would recommend there. And then for your snare, what you can do is you can keep the same air, but I would pick a snare with a better transient. For example, the Ivory snare Build 3 is just the best transient of all time. So you could take the transient from that and mix it with the air from your current snare, and it's gonna treat you way nicer. All right, you fix that, and you fix the sub, and then you'll be able to do whatever mixing issues, or you're gonna be able to fix whatever mixing issues, Jesus Christ, we're about to find right now. So you're lacking a little bit of loudness. I would say you need at least three more LUFs to get it up to like negative 4-ish, 3.5, whatever. Let's see what happens when we do try to get there. So a little bit less. So we're able to get over -4 relatively easily. The only thing that's really clipping is your kick. That new kick will help you quite a bit. So pretty easy fix right there. You're just missing a little bit of loudness, but it's almost an instantaneous fix. And let me check mono. Mono mix checks out completely. You're fine. So overall, I think this is really, really strong. There's some very, very basic changes that we can do here that's going to make a massive, massive difference. Biggest focus, drums, and the sub. You'll be able to fix everything else from there. Great work, Jared. Can't wait to hear what you got next time. All right. We now have Chris run it. Let's see. And it is 142.30. All right. So you got here, Chris. Boom. All right, get this G clip off of there. Over here, we're good. First things first, you got some popping going on your kick drum right there. I would make sure you get that fixed. You can use some fades. It's likely coming from... It does sound like it's coming from that kick drum, so I'd just use a fade on it a little bit to make sure that that popping goes away. Let me give you some of my opinions here. So first things first, your mix down is really strong, but you have a little bit of a priority imbalance in my opinion. Your sub is bussin'. Look at that shit, fucking moving. That being said, you're not obtaining you're just at about -5 LUFs on average, so I would try to prioritize a little bit more some of the volume of all the other sounds, pull that sub down a little bit. So all that I would really do is just pull your sub down 1 or 2 decibels, push your master gain up 1 or 2 decibels. I think that's gonna solve that loudness problem so that you don't sound like you're getting drowned out compared to the next track that comes in. Aside from that, it's really, really good otherwise. Sounds are strong, no qualms there. Cool, so everything I think really checks out there. I like your sounds. It sums to mono, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, sums to mono, fine, no problem there. So yeah, overall, I think the drop is going really well. Now here's my unsolicited piece of feedback. I would challenge you to try to create a more interesting intro. The intro is essentially serving no purpose right now aside from just getting to the drop. It's that, like, you know, feels dark, ambient, but there's really nothing going on there. It's nothing that grabs the listener and tries to pull them in. I challenge you to try to make something a little bit more energetic and compulsive feeling for an intro there. I'm trying to think of like the best way to like describe it. The best case study that I always use is Tonight, because they have the best intros ever. Let's listen. I actually just referenced them not too long ago. Listen. Like, and there's patterns every single time. They start with really dry sounds, and they're very straightforward. They're iconic sounds. You can't miss them. They're very, very distinct. They're dry. They come in pretty instantaneously. Like, there's no like swell, there's no ambience, there's nothing going on. It's just like straightforward energy right off the rip. So you could maybe try to take some influence from them, but I challenge you to try to make the intro a little bit more interesting, because right now it just feels a little bit like a vehicle to get to the drop, but it's not really serving any purpose. So that's my challenge for you. Other than that, I think your mixing is really solid. I think that the drop is really cool. Another thing I might challenge you to do, so that sound right there is just going wah, 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 wah. I might challenge you to make like a little melody out of that, like wah, 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 wah. Wah, 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 wah. I don't know, just like rattling off the top of the head, you know what I'm saying though? Make a little melody out of it. That'll really grab the listener's attention as well, and just create an extra dimension to the track. But again, mixing is really, really solid. Everything here I think is sounding good. You know, you can use those fixes that I told you, and I think it'll get everything straightened right up. I did not mean to open battle.net, fuck off. But yeah, hopefully that helps. And I can't wait to hear what you got for next month, brother. All right. Let's see. We are on the last one of the day, which is COLOURVEINSDUMBO. Say less. Boop-a-doop. Fuck. Oh no, bro. Damn. All right. Well, I can't review it sadly because there's no download. We gotta have the download. I apologize, guys. I need to be able to hear exactly what it sounds like in SoundCloud. It's just shit quality, and I can't monitor it. But, well, then that is the day. So, good learning experience for me. Hopefully I can, hopefully this is helpful to you guys enough. We will be doing the same exact thing next month with a bigger window. We're gonna open up the feedback for submission within the very first week of April. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I appreciate you guys sending demos. To those of you that did not enable download links, please make sure next month you get your download links handled so that we can provide you proper feedback over here on my end. But all right, guys, great stuff from everybody, and we'll see you next month. Peace.